Hey there all, Aman here from Transition Partners, here for another episode of Leadership Lessons in Cyber. Good morning, Karl. How are you doing?
I'm doing marvelously, thank you.
Good. Thank you for your time, Karl. I know, just as a bit of an intro for anyone listening, me and yourself I think we've known each other now for about 6 months, just through your relationship with EPAM and sort of, I suppose our relationship has gone a bit shorter than expected. And it'd be good for people to, on this podcast, which is all about leadership within cyber, get an understanding for yourself, get an understanding for your philosophy, given the fact that, and I'll get you to introduce yourself, but given that you work with different customers and understand their challenges. But I suppose for anyone listening who maybe don't know you, could you just give an introduction to yourself? How did you get to where you are?
I'll love to, yeah. So thanks, Aman. So yeah, I'm Karl Ots. I'm a cloud and cybersecurity SME leader, SME, however you want to call that. I've been working in around cyber and specifically cloud cybersecurity over 15 years now, and mostly I've been in consultancy type of roles. So I've been working with all kinds of customers, all kinds of organizations, from smaller product or startup like customers, companies wanting to already are aiming at being global, serving global audiences, all the way from their kind of product global reach, all the way from there into this large enterprise field where I've mostly worked with technology, manufacturing, finance, and regulated environments as well. So basically, I've been working with most of the organizations who have been going for the cloud, especially on the Microsoft cloud, however long we've had the cloud now, for 10, 12 years or so, at least. And yeah, on that space, I also do quite a bit of public speaking. I'm an author. I do LinkedIn learning courses, so I'm also an MVP and Microsoft MVP and Microsoft RD as well on that note.
Perfect.
And in my day job, I'm working at EPAM Systems, as you briefly mentioned. So EPAM is a global engineering consultancy company, and I'm working there as a head of cloud security. And yeah, happy to be here in the podcast.
Yeah, perfect. And obviously you've talked about EPAM, that's where we've got acquainted. Now, people who don't know EPAM, perhaps in America, perhaps even in Europe sometimes, tell us a bit about what you guys do in more detail, your role, and how you get involved with customers.
Absolutely. So I like to mention EPAM as one of the best kept secrets of Wall Street. So we are actually a 60,000 people company. We are massive. We have people all across 50 different countries, most continents, as they are, still rooting for those less visited ones with a little bit less people out there. We're headquartered in Newtown, Pennsylvania, actually, but most of our people are based in the EMEA region, and we are serving both the US market. Roughly half of our business is coming from the US, as well as the other half is then coming from EMEA. And then we have the emerging markets in APAC, where we are also growing very actively there. So EPAM, as I mentioned, is a global engineering company. We build stuff, we break stuff from a security perspective. We are really builders of products. We actually started off building software for some of the biggest software players out there, kind of traditional, old school software houses. Then moved on to working with the .com era, search engines, gaming companies, that sort of stuff, and only then started working with enterprises. So kind of a different angle out there.
Awesome. And a question that we didn't prepare about for this is more about your Microsoft side. Obviously, EPAM are very acquainted with Microsoft, and you yourself MVP. Tell us, in terms of your evolution with the Microsoft journey, how did that passion start? And I suppose, what are you doing now to continue your development, given that the space is just so huge?
Absolutely, it's a massive space indeed. I actually stumbled across Microsoft Tech sort of as an accident. I'm originally from Finland, even though I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland right now, and we are pretty much an open source and Linux house. Linus Torvalds is from the same university that I went into. We built SSH, we built IRC, a lot of this stuff. So a lot of my early kind of self-learning days were not around Microsoft technologies. but I sort of stumbled across that and found some curious topics there. The first one that I professionally started working with was actually Windows Phone, and even though that didn't work out that well, I still made another bet on Microsoft on this thing called Windows Azure, and I'm still on that journey.
Yeah, and just to mention, you do a lot on LinkedIn around training courses. You wrote a lot of blogs, which for anyone who's listening would perhaps get a lot of value from you. And mainly this area spans leadership, this podcast. And given you've been from a technical capacity now to overall a head of cloud security for a global business, leadership's probably something that you've had to develop over time. So tell me about your experience with leadership. What's your philosophy around leadership? And a loaded question, but how's that evolved?
Oh, fantastic question. I love that. Absolutely. So, how I like to describe my leadership style when I'm kind of giving a prepared statement, which is not the whole truth as you alluded to, and I'll get to the how and why and how did that evolve. But how I like to describe that is basically that my leadership style is very much what I call transformational. I encourage and inspire my teams by being authentic, transparent, and relatable myself, or at least trying to be at my best at being authentic, transparent, and relatable, and building both that trust and also because most of the business and cyber business, of course, more than maybe some others, it's all about change. There's always some transformation going on, either with your skills, with your business, with the technology that you're working on, even with the roles and the methodologies of the project. Everything's in a constant change. So that's why I'm focusing on that transformational journey, building those journeys with my teams, and the only way to make that work is really getting into that same boat, building that trust through those matters. So I actually picked up a couple of different things throughout my professional experience. So when I was working at Microsoft, we actually modeled, or we had this leadership set of principles about modeling, coaching, and caring, and that's where some parts of that, which I was mentioning, from this management style and leadership style actually are coming from. You should always be modeling the same behaviors that you're expecting from your teams yourself. You know, if I'm asking you to do something that I'm not comfortable doing, or behaving in a way that you're not expecting me to behave, that won't work. That's not authentic, and that's just not fair. So that's kind of a baseline for my leadership style there.
I love it. And there's always company guidelines on, let's say, leadership and how people should act. And then there's a personal philosophy. So away from the company side, I want to talk more about you here, but what plans and processes have you put in place to develop future leaders and I suppose give them the platform to grow ultimately?
Yeah, maybe I'm just so enthusiastic about the earlier part. So let me even add a little bit more
Yeah.
to that previous part there. So because I've been a consultant, I've done those kind of, I picked out things from company side, but I've been a consultant myself. I've been a trainer, so I picked a couple of other traits there as well. And these are evolving my own leadership style, but these are also some traits that I develop in my own teams, in my own individual contributors as well. So as a trainer, I basically learned more about this coaching part and teaching part. It's more important to let a student or a team member to go through the process of the learning rather than to give the answer to them direct or actively. And that also results very nicely into, I can actually then build a team around me with people that are smarter than me. I don't need to be the one who has to be able to give them the answer, because if I will do that, I will be the limiting factor, and yeah, that doesn't scale. That's not transformational. That's not what I want to do. I want to learn. I don't want to be the dumbest person in the room if I can. And that brings me to your second question here. So I'm passionately nurturing new talent. I mentor all kinds of different underrepresented people who want to enter tech overall. Maybe they're coming from a startup world, maybe they're coming from other areas, maybe they're career switchers, just students. Uh, or specifically cyber, or specifically some of these Microsoft technologies. I'm part of some through my MVP and RD networks. I'm part of some of Girls Who Code programs, some startup programs, and so forth. And this is something that I do a bit, my small bit, to get more people into the beginning of that journey. But more structurally, something that when I'm hiring, or when I'm part of managing a bid, or when I'm consulting some of my customers, what should they hire, or how should they hire or look for talent. That's when I try to encourage them to kind of look beyond, and I do this myself as well, is to looking beyond just the kind of background on a paper format or kind of formal credentials, because of this massive transformation. I really try to understand and get to the motivation of the candidates. Whenever someone has a different background, that's what usually kind of gets me thinking. So if they have the motivation to learn and transform and lead, that's then they are boundless, then they are limitless. Yeah,
I like it. And you've obviously you've had a good journey, you've got a big network around leadership. It'd be good for people maybe stepping into that leadership role now to understand what challenges you've had in that space.
oh, absolutely. And this is maybe something that everyone has their own story. Personally, myself, I've been working with global and distributed teams most of my life. Most of my professional experience and even social experiences have been around remote experiences. During the pandemic era, we started playing D&D remotely and that sort of stuff. So I thought that I handled this well. I thought that I can do remote very well, and I was sort of surprised to learn from myself that kind of I really need to make an effort to show empathy and build the trust when everyone suddenly is kind of thrown into this asynchronous and disconnected and remote era of working. It's different when the whole company is built around that. If you already join a team knowing that these are the best practices regarding how do you include someone who is remote if everyone else is on the same physical room and those sort of stuff. It's very different from if you do that in an organization that hasn't been ready or isn't ready for that. So certainly a challenge on showing that empathy in a remote and mostly text-based. If you are not on the same time zone, it's even text-based questions. So if I, as your manager, ask how are you or are you okay, those can be very alarming if it's only text-based. You don't hear me, you don't see me, the tone of my voice.
Absolutely. And actually, that's a really good question that we didn't ask. So you've looked at the remote world versus, I suppose, office world, where leadership is. You've obviously had differing opinions, different views. What do you see as the future of leadership in that space? Because again, remote's going to continue. So how do people develop into a remote leader?
So that is certainly my favorite topics. There is no right answer. As I said, I've seen a lot of organizations where that works or where that seems to be working to an extent. There are different ways. Everyone has their own journey. I don't have an answer. I wish I had. If you have an answer, please tell me. I'll take it and run with this right away. For myself, it's really about trying to not just mimic exactly what you've done or think about this that this is something that will go away. We will go back to working everyone in the same time and place. That won't happen. The global the talent market, if you're looking at this from a leadership perspective, the talent market is already distributed or disrupted, if you will. There's no longer, if you're building a massive product, you don't just go to Silicon Valley to get that concentration of talent. You can spread across, so that gives you more options. It's no longer limited to just people with the same exact background, which is good. Also from the perspective of when we just were talking about this, reaching out to different backgrounds of talent. I think this is something that we all need to learn as we go. I'm hoping that at the same time we can also put into practice more humane kind of modern kind of millennial or Gen Z ways of management, and not just look at this from a top-down perspective. Of course, not every style works for everyone else. We will be multi-generational for even longer now if remote work still stays on. That means that you are no longer limited to your maybe even just your physical abilities to commute and so forth. So yeah, very much looking forward to cracking that egg.
I like it. And 20 years ago, you were in a position, or I don't know how long ago this was, but you were breaking into the tech world, the cybersecurity world. You had a different experience than what people would now with the emergence of LinkedIn and I suppose even more marketing around tech and getting into it. What can people do? What advice would you give to people trying to break in where they've got zero experience?
Fantastic. If you really don't, if you're not in tech at all, if you're wanting to get into tech and cyber, fantastic. Welcome. We need you. That's absolutely the truth. Um, as you were kind of saying, 20 years ago or maybe 30 years ago, our industry was basically full of self-learned people. Everything was sort of, it was this quite toxic masculine internet culture of pop quiz interviews of name by heart these specific command line commands in the favorite tool that I think, and it's even this kind of almost kind of religious discussions about which operating system or which tool should be using. We are luckily growing up. It's no longer just that. So if you're new into tech, I have a few recommendations to you there. Don't just try to mimic what everyone else has done before you into getting there. It's not, the future careers won't be like that. So just for that entry level breaking into, I really recommend that you find your first specialty. You will have many. Don't worry. It doesn't need to be the hardest one. It doesn't need to be the top one right now. You just need to find the first one that gets you through the door. For example, in cyber, it can be operational security, like a SOC analyst. It can be identity and access management. There are several other fields that are very much entry level friendly, and we finally start to have more reasonable expectations for those roles as well. So we don't. We used to have a few years ago, and some organizations still have basically these requirements that you need to have this $5,000 or $10,000 certificate in order to get into a certain entry level job, and that's of course a massive impediment for anyone coming from any other background than super privileged one like myself. And there are other areas, of course. If you have a bit of experience, you can go, if you have some tech experience, you can go into offensive security. If you are curious, if you want to break things, there's lots of self-learning tools. If you want to do pen testing, forensic investigation, reverse engineering, that sort of stuff, I recommend Hack the Box, a great self-learning tool where you can play against others. They now have cloud content as well. They announced AWS content or AWS scenarios for your playgrounds for the Hack the Box experience. And if you are coming from some other backgrounds, if you are coming maybe from a system engineer background or sysadmin background or maybe a developer background, you usually have these touch points that are already can leverage your existing work. So if you have sysadmin background, you can think about adding automation or adding infrastructure security. If you have development background, you can add application security or maybe DevSecOps there. But overall, if you don't have anything, or if you have, I really recommend self-learning stuff like LinkedIn Learning, Udemy courses, anything that you can do on your own pace. And even though I did say that you don't have to have the certificates and we are slowly getting out of there, it does help you to get started. If you just want to validate your skills with external authorities, if you want to kind of borrow that authority from someone else, then certificates are a very good way for that. For cloud, a lot of the cloud certs are sponsored. There's lots of materials and there's lots of ways that you can take the actual exams for free as well. And IC Squared, one of the security certificate bodies, actually has this certified in cybersecurity, a new entry-level cert, and they have a program that you do need to sign up. There's a bit of paperwork that you need to do, but basically you'll get that entry-level certificate materials, training materials, but also the exam fee for free. So it's a great way to get started.
And actually go on you've done your own specific training programs as well, which can help. And that's something I want to add, right? I think it's great to handle the tech and obviously go into one company to specialize, but from a standpoint of developing your career, and I don't know if you agree, but my advice to people would be be a commercially aware person. Look at companies, research them, research their leaders, see if they can actually help you develop your career. This is not going to be something where you're going to be in the company for 10, 15 years now. That's not the environment. But where can you move in 3-4 years into the organization to develop? What training plans do they have in place? So my advice would be look at companies, research them first, reach out to people like yourself in leadership positions. That just shows more aptitude. And if I were going to follow anyone on LinkedIn, follow people like Karl, and then Stephen Rodriguez, who I'll link in this. He's brilliant. These are the people that you want to speak to. So that's my advice given my background. And then from yours, it's fantastic. But people now after this, they'll want to reach you and speak to you, perhaps, probably even network or whatever level. How can they normally reach you?
Yeah, fantastic. So they can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm available both on the instructor side and the regular side of LinkedIn. And if you have any questions on how to get into cyber, especially if you're coming from an underrepresented group or if you're breaking just into cyber, please feel free to reach out to me. I might not answer to you right away, but I will answer to everyone from that position. I guarantee that. And you can check out my blog, karlos.com as well.
We'll link that in the bio. Thank you very much, Karl, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Leadership Lessons in Cyber. I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode.